times I've seen children be confused and think that revising writing is I take all that work I wrote, like something you wrote a couple weeks ago, and you just copy it again.
Oh no.
And that is not revising writing. That is copying your writing. So the question is, why do you revise writing? Let's see I want a couple ideas. I'm going to see if you're close. I'll hear from Mr. Mazzo first. One quick sentence. Why do you revise writing?
I'm going to revise writing so you can, because you can always make writing better.
Stop right there. Let's give him a big hand. That's it. Put your hands down. Stop clapping. You revise it to make it better. And so you need to understand that people, when they revise writing, they're constantly trying to make their writing better. Let me see if you are historical fans and you know this speech. See if this means anything to you. This day, December 7th, 1941, will live in world history. Raise your hand if you remember that speech. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Does anybody think I said it right? Actually, I didn't say it right. I missed it. Because that person who wrote that speech was, anybody know? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, back in 1941 when Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And this is a picture of that speech that he wrote. That's not it.
It's crossed off.
You'll notice, if you can read that from the back, we lost it. Good timing.
No, there it is.
Oh, thank you. Magical. He said, when he first wrote it, today, December 7, 1941, a date that will live in world history, he scratched it out and changed it. He revised his writing, and that phrase is, it will be a day that will live in infamy. And if you're my age, more or less, you know that phrase like the back of your hand, because you've heard it so many times. So he thought to himself when he wrote this speech, I can make it better. He probably reread it many times and decided, here's a word that fits better. Infamy as opposed to world history. No time for questions, Mr. Rizzo. Thank you. So, writers revise. You are writers, are you not? You write all the time. You're authors. I want you to think of yourself as authors. Here's an example of an author who revised her writing.
Wow.
This is what your writing should look like. You have ideas. You put your ideas on paper. It's just your best thinking right then. But then as you go back to your paper, you're going to need to think, that could be better. Let me read it to my partner. Let me read it to my teacher. Let me read it to myself. And I'll keep making it better like Mr. Mazzo said. So that's what revising looks like. So if your paper that you're going to rewrite in a couple weeks looks exactly the same as what you just did, you did not revise. You're a Xerox machine. You just copied. So we're going to do some very quick revisions. I'm going to take a piece of paper that one of your classmates wrote, and I'm going to go through it and revise it for a couple things. That's what I'm saying? How about that?
They get the camera backwards.
Go ahead, Doctor. Oh, it's covered on the screen. Is that a technology we can help with?
Now it's
Got a picture of me. That's scary. So what I'm going to show you here in a minute is the rubric for your 6th grade informational writing. A rubric tells you what good writing should have in it, correct? Yeah. Like is that Mr. Garcia's done it? No. Sit right there. Did you want that? I don't know. That's good. I'm not going to use them. So here's one of the elements on your rubric that you have already looked at before. I know you've seen this, or you may not remember it. Thank you, right there. One thing I need to do when I write is I need to use or cite credible evidence, print or digital, about a topic. So if I'm going to write informational text, it's not just whatever's inside my head. I need to cite evidence from, hopefully, an expert. And so what I'm going to do in the piece of writing I'm going to revise in front of you right now is I'm going to focus on that one area of really citing that evidence properly. So let's jump right to it. We're going to do a piece of writing one of your classmates wrote. And I'm going to take one very small portion of the writing. Here's the whole piece right here. There's the whole piece right there. So it's an excellent piece of writing here about Adam. Now remember that piece of writing you did on Adam? It's been a while. You do? Remember his old thing? So this person looked at the task, and I have the task here. I want to remind you that was describe the basic structure of an atom. Changes in their positions. Be sure to discuss both the benefits and dangers of atomic particles. I'm going to focus my revision today on that last part of the task. Remember when you write for one of these prompts, you have to think, what is the task? this person was going to look at the dangers and the benefits. In fact, I'm going to focus right now on just the dangers of atomic particles. So that's their whole piece, but we're not going to revise the whole thing because we don't have an hour. So, you put that away. Next, we look at this. Here's one of their paragraphs, and this is about the benefits. I'm sorry, this is about the dangers. So I'm going to read out that out loud to you, and we're going to walk through what I would do if I was revising it. So, on the other hand, atoms can be harmful. If you mess with atoms too much, you can make something dangerous. This includes harmful chemical elements. For example, some atoms can be radioactive. This occurs when the atomic nucleus breaks down into smaller particles. Now, when I reread that to myself, I went back to the article from which this information was brought, and it was this article here, Dangerous Particles. Do you guys remember that? Dangerous Particles? Yes? Okay, done. And I see in the first paragraph there is some mention of radioactivity, which this author referred to, but did not cite specifically, and so we're going to fix that part of it, citing it specifically. But I also found that there was another piece of this article that I felt was more pertinent to our discussion in terms of the harmful nature of atoms. It was clear. When I reread his paper, his or her paper, I don't know who it was, I wasn't clear what radioactivity means. I've heard that word before, but based on what they told me, I couldn't tell you how would that harm me. So on radioactive, what does that mean? Do I start glowing in the dark? I don't know. The article didn't tell me, and the person who wrote the piece did not tell me. So I'm going to focus on this part here at the bottom, which talks about nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. So fission and fusion. Fusion is what happens in the sun when two particles come together, and those are explosions on the sun cause fusion. And fission is what happens when we create nuclear bombs. Is that harmful?
Yes.
Nuclear bombs are extremely harmful, right? We know that speech I gave you, December 7, 1941, World War II started, the U.S. got involved because Japan bombed the U.S. It ended with a nuclear bomb. A nuclear bomb in two Japanese cities. It destroyed hundreds of thousands of people. So, can atoms be harmful?
Yes.
Extremely so. And I want to make that point very clear. You're probably missing, so I'm going to be done before dinner time. So, we have to keep going. So, it goes back to the piece of paper that I'm now going to revise. One of the things I do when I revise, and when writers revise, they reread their papers often, and they listen for what makes sense. So here we go. On the other hand, atoms can be harmful. I think that's a great opening. I really like that. It's clear. At this point in the paragraph, for this author is going to talk about the harmfulness of atoms. No doubt. If you mess with atoms too much, you can make something dangerous. That sounds really fuzzy to me. I don't know what they mean, but I'm not going to answer my question. Sorry. We don't want to throw that. So that sounded really funny when it says if you mess with atoms too much. I don't really see the clarity of what you mean by mess with atoms. So I'm going to get rid of all that.